Yeah, it's the 2 periods of hockey. We just loved the way we played, and then the third, I think I used the word squirrely. That might be a little bit accurate. It was unusual, but it happens. We'll remember it. It's kind of fun. We won, so everybody gets to enjoy the good parts of it, right?
You have said rivalries are built in the playoffs. Back in Toronto for the first time since Game 5 of the second round. Just what are you expecting from Toronto today?
Yeah, I think the same. So we've gone, we've had Boston, Carolina, and Toronto now. The crowd, the teams are now into the season a little bit. We're at the 20-game mark, right? So they're kind of trying to work on the things they need to get better at, but the crowd will be into it pretty good here tonight, which I think should be. I'm hoping it's good for us back-to-back. You can use the road team's crowd to bring the energy to the building, eh? So we're going to have to find it tonight.
There's a lot of talk about Stanley Cup hangovers, whether it's the team that wins or doesn't. How's
Yeah.
your team dealt with that and with a short summer and the injuries you had?
I mean, I don't know the answer to some of that. I would say that when the last game was over, there was a disappointment at times for me personally during the summer, but it didn't last long because there was nothing left to give. That was it. So if you give everything you possibly can, then you can leave it there. We left it there. It was a spectacular year. We enjoyed the hell out of it. And then once you mentally can leave it, then you can recover. Then you can, and like we measure everything. We ran we ran an identical training camp to last year, and we know by how we can measure certain things, they worked harder. So they didn't come in slower. They didn't come in, we got to go through this camp again. They came in and they went hard. And then the big though, I mean, I don't even know if there's any value in anything I just said. We had a couple of 2 or 3 really critical guys out of our lineup. And between management and pro scouts, they brought in a bunch of players that could play, and that helped us. So our team was pretty darn good. We missed Montour and Ekblad and Bennett / Barkov when they were out, but we brought in good players, and they've played well for us.
How does it change as a coach, though, when you've had the team go to the final like that, and they all have that experience? Most of them are back, and from your perspective,
Systematically, we're like way better than we were last year at this time because we kind of understand what we're trying to do. And then your relationships change a little bit with players. It's easier to connect with a guy. Like we had a pretty defined curve there. We weren't very good till about Christmas. Then we were a pretty good team after. Not just, it wasn't just in the playoffs. It was a pretty good team after Christmas. And so now when you're talking about where a guy's level needs to get to, he understands what you're talking about. So it just makes communication easier.
What does internal accountability rank for you in terms as a coach, like for a room and a group, in terms of the importance and getting things pointed in the right direction?
You cannot hold anybody accountable to a standard they don't understand. So before we talk about players, it's the coaches. My job is to make sure that we all understand what we're trying to do. And if they don't understand it, they'll never get to it. So we spend all of our time trying to get a pretty good idea of what the hell we're trying to do. And if we don't get there, it's one of two. I either haven't communicated the importance of the idea, or they don't feel that helps them reach their goals, which we're not really interested in. So the idea of accountability is important. That word gets fired around a lot, like in the locker room. I don't know. My job is to articulate a standard. And theirs is not to enforce it. They've got to imbue it. They've got to go out there and show that standard, because that's where the trust is built between the players.
How's Aaron looked in his games?
Who's that?
Aaron Ekblad back. How have you?
Yeah, really good. Like,
you felt about his game?
Really good.
Yeah.
First of all, we think he can get up the ice as well as anybody. We think that's an important part of what it is. He could have had 2 or 3 last night, but he's added a physical piece to his game, and that came in last year in the playoffs because I think he was so hobbled by like game 3, he couldn't do anything but hit almost, right? He could get to the corner, he could hit you, that was about all he could do. And he's kind of kept that, so we're happy with where he's at. But I think both those guys, they get 10 to 15 games before we even start thinking about where they're at. They were off a long time.
The Leafs are splitting up Matthews and Marner. Like, how does that change the dynamic, if at all, for you guys tonight?
I don't know, is the truth. Like, you've got McDavid and Draisaitl. Would you rather see them together or apart? I don't know. It depends on if we win or not. That will happen. I don't think it's a major shift. Like, we do it all the time. We've got Barkov and Verhaeghe go in and out together. One's a 40-goal scorer, one's a Selke winner. So we flip it just by almost staleness. If I need to make a change, I'll flip it just to see if I can get something going.
And a lot of teams that have done what you did last year.
Yeah.
And then the next year, historically, it's been a problem for a lot of teams. Made
Right.
the final or made it far in the playoffs, and sometimes don't make the playoffs.
Right.
How do you prevent, knowing the history of all that, how do you prevent that from happening? Or how happening?
Well, I've been on both sides of that, right? In 02, we get to the final and lose to Detroit, and we miss the playoffs the next year. But I felt in that run, it was kind of, people had said, what was different about that? There was an Olympic break that year, and we came out of that Olympic break hot, and we got confidence and we got feeling good. I don't think our structure was any better necessarily. Our team necessarily improved over the course of the summer. It was just, we got lucky, we got hot. Arthur Survey stood on his head for like 6 weeks, okay. But we were better than that last year, and we had quite a bit of adversity during the year that maybe kept it from being obvious. But from January 2nd on, we were a pretty good hockey team.
That was hard.
Pat got sick, that's right. So there was a lot of, and then they had all those injuries that almost came back. It's a little bit like Boston, right? Sundin was out, Darcy Tucker was out, and Ty Domi was out. And Ty had an impact, an absolute impact on the game. He affected the way the game was played, and they didn't play game one and beat us. It might have been 1-0, and Ponikarovsky, I think, scored the goal, and they were hard to play against. Then all those guys came back in, and it was a different game. Right now they had to. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a while ago. That's 20 years ago.
Was that a series Pat missed a game too, Paul?
Yes. Yeah. He wasn't feeling particularly well that night. So I think we're different, Steve. I think our team's better. I think 132 points the year before. So I figured out a way to get it down to 92. It's coaching, and then. But we were pretty good.
Paul, when you've been in different teams, you have a leadership group. You're with those guys every day. But when you move on, how do those relationships change? I know it's probably not one size fits all, but there's probably a cooling off period. But like, how do those relationships maintain when you've left?
When you leave a team?
Yeah, when you've left, especially with the leadership group, when you're just so.
Yeah, so I never felt I was more invested with the leadership group. As a matter of fact, the leadership group I spent probably less time with because they kind of knew what they were doing. Right? Their game didn't change much. I didn't. And then I'm not a connector or an over communicator. I hate my cell phone. You send me a text, you'll get an answer 5 days. I don't stay in contact with a lot of them. They're all fine. Like, they didn't need me at the start. I coached them, and when I left, they were fine too. Actually, probably a little happier. So they went out and had their lives, and I went and had mine. So I don't stay. It will be kind of. So I'll go back even further. Eric Stahl in Carolina, really like him, good relationship, and then don't see him for 12 years. And then in the bubble, Minnesota and Winnipeg were in, we're crossing paths. And I hadn't seen the guy in 12 years. We sat and talked for half hour. It was wonderful. Turns out, 5-6 years later, he's playing for me again. But those are the nice connections that, yeah.
Paul, we didn't get a chance to ask you yesterday, but the Panthers announced a big retirement celebration.
Yeah.
Just how deserved is that for what he's done and continuing to do for this organization?
Yeah, a celebration for a guy. We always say nice things about players that retire, so I want to make sure that what I say, this guy is so unique. He is hard-driven, wired, passionate about the game. We needed somebody to work Ekblad and Montour out because only he can he gets on the ice, he puts all his equipment on, he works them into the ground, right? And then he's got a relationship with those guys, so they don't want to let him down, but they can barely keep up to him. So anyway, we needed that. He said, sure, but he was in Sweden. He got on the plane, flew over, and was on the ice the next day. He's just a gamer, so those guys, because they actually gave more to the game than the game gave them. They won't say that, but I think that's true. They became the personalities of the game that you guys get to write about, get to enjoy. They're special guys, so we should take time and acknowledge what they've done for the game.
Any lineup changes tonight?
Not that I know of.
Bob again?
No, Stolarz is going.
Thanks.
Okay, guys, have a great day. Okay.